Let's begin this evening on Capitol Hill, where the first congressional hearing on those attacks in Benghazi, Libya, just wrapped up. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee held the hearing, questioning top officials with the State Department and embassy security about the situation on the ground there. U.S. Security Officer Eric Nordstrom said he personally sent 2 cables to the U.S. State Department asking for increased security while he was stationed in Libya. Here he is speaking at the hearing a little earlier today.
I had not seen an attack of such ferocity and intensity previously in Libya, nor in my time with the Diplomatic Security Service. I'm concerned that this attack signals a new security reality.
Now, many more details about what happened that evening of September 11th in Benghazi emerged today, with a focus on who knew what when and why certain decisions regarding security in Libya were made. The bottom line here: the claims that the attacks that killed Ambassador Chris Stevens were a result of a protest gone awry are false. The U.S. State Department now says there was no protest. What happened on the night of September 11th had nothing to do with the controversial offensive video called The Innocence of Muslims, and everything to do with a group of armed men who came into the compound where the Benghazi consulate was based. And after being unable to get to Ambassador Stevens directly, well, they set the building on fire. Ambassador Stevens most likely died of smoke inhalation. So we want to talk more about the changing story and also the developing investigation with retired CIA officer Ray McGovern and RT correspondent Liz Wall. And Liz, let me start with you because you just got back here.
I did literally minutes ago.
From the hearings. Just tell us a little bit about what you heard today.
All right, well, lawmakers today basically demanding answers on the Libya attacks. Congress questioned some key witnesses about the security failures in Benghazi. Right off the bat, we have the chairman of this committee, Representative Darrell Issa, saying this is not about a YouTube video. This is not about a video that went viral, that made fun of the Prophet Muhammad, that this was, in fact, premeditated. He called them predictable terrorist attacks. And he really hailed Eric Nordstrom for coming forward, hailing him as a whistleblower for coming forward with some of the information, where he made repeated requests saying that the situation, because he was there on the ground in Benghazi, saying that the situation here is very volatile, and he felt that his safety and that of the ambassador and his colleagues there were in grave danger, and he made repeated attempts to get increased security, and for some reason, those requests were ignored.
Ray, talk about this. 2 things here. First of all, why is this information that's just coming out right now in terms of the situation on the ground regarding security? And number 2, how could some of those requests been ignored?
Well, this is a political carnival. This is Representative Issa trying to make political points. Now, they're trying to get Hillary Clinton for a lack of understanding what security is needed. But that's not why they should try to get Hillary Clinton. They should get Hillary Clinton because of what she and others did in Libya. I mean, one of the congressmen said, well, you know, are there more or less al-Qaeda in Libya since we bombed the heck out of the country? Well, there are far more, said the witnesses. Well, how many shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles are in their hands? And when I heard the answer, 10, I said, well, that's not many. 10 to 20,000.
Oh, my gosh. So,
you know, the problem really here is not whether the State Department erred in first saying that it had to do with video. I mean, after all, that's what happened in Cairo. The problem here is not getting to the bottom of the thing. And the bottom of the thing is these same congressmen, okay, they forgot their constitutional duty in insisting that before we went to war in Libya, that there be a congressional vote. They ducked that, and the result is that people like Hillary Clinton and others think they can, you know, fix things by sending bombers over a country. The country is a mess, and the militias are all over the place. They're not really directed by any point. There are al-Qaeda out there. But, you know, when you try to think of defending 284 diplomatic representations of the U.S. abroad, I mean, you'd have to wind down the war in Afghanistan to get them enough Marines to go. So what do? They're contractors. They get people from the Libyan nationals, and you can't really depend on them. So the root causes were completely missed. All we saw was the were the trees, and nobody ever looks at the forest.
I think that's a really interesting point. Liz, while you were there at the hearing today, just wondering if you were able to sort of talk to any of these, State Department officials after the hearing or during any breaks and what they had to say.
After the hearing, I was able to talk to Mr. Nordstrom. He is the security officer there for the U.S. State Department that was on the ground and really saw firsthand how volatile the situation is over there in Libya. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to go on the record with us because, with these things, they have to get prior approval. Hopefully he can come on and talk about it another time with us later on in the show. But he is being hailed by some members of Congress as a whistleblower, because if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have known that there were warning signs ahead of time, and that this was not just a result of this YouTube video, contrary to what was said in the media and by the State Department.
Ray, let me ask you, I mean, this happened a month ago now, and the timeline of exactly what happened has changed immensely. I mean, with facts coming out that were contradicting what was being said before. As a former CIA officer, I mean, were you kind of keen into some of these holes in the story from day one?
Well, the intelligence community is under the gun in situations like this. When there's not enough information on what actually happened, and people like our ambassador to the UN says, I need to know right now, and they give her their best guess, and their best guess was wrong. And they made very clear that this is our best guess, and it's preliminary, and so did she. So
you're talking about Ambassador Susan Rice when she made the appearance on all the Sunday talk shows on September 16th, 5 days after these attacks happened.
As far as I know, preliminary information, she was very careful, okay? And then later she said, whoops, wait a second, the intelligence community now has come up with evidence that there was a terrorist attack. And so the Republican leadership there, and especially Congressman Issa, are trying to make hay out of the fact that, whoops, they were wrong. And they're saying that you were trying to deliberately deceive us. And why haven't you mentioned terrorists? You don't like the word terrorist. Were you afraid to mention? And why did the embassy in Cairo apologize? It's all contrived. And if it weren't a month before the election, it would be harder to understand.
I was just about to say, you called it, I think, a political festival or field day. A carnival, of course. And we can't ignore the fact that we are 4 weeks away, less now, from the election. And this is a divided time. It has been an extremely divided Congress. So I would just want to play a little part from today's hearing that sort of illustrates sort of the tension that remains there.
Requests for extensions of more security by the mission in Libya, however, appear to have often been rejected, or even, more deliberately, officials in Washington told diplomats in Libya not even to make them.
Although the chairman claims we are pursuing this investigation on a, quote, bipartisan basis, that has simply not been the case.
So here you have the Republican chairman, Darrell Issa, and then you have the ranking member, Elijah Cummings, the chairman basically saying and echoing what we've been hearing from the GOP, bad, Obama administration, you messed up. And then you hear from Congressman Cummings, he sort of went into detail of some of the rules that were broken. He says documents were withheld from the rest of the committee by Republicans on the committee. He said, interview testimony was not shared with them. He said that they weren't invited to go on this fact-finding mission. Let me ask you, Liz, I mean, did you get the sense that politics was definitely at play here today?
I mean, absolutely. You saw, we just heard, we had the chairman there really going after the administration for basically all these security failures. You had a lot of people coming out and saying, you know what? This is acknowledging that this has been politicized. We had members of Congress coming out saying that this is not something that should be politicized. We're 27 days before the election, that this is a bipartisan issue and this is our country first. But as you know, we're 27 days before an election, so
it's just not realistic to expect that politics will not be at play. I mean, does politics, and being at play, get in the way of CIA investigations?
Well, not necessarily. I think my former colleagues do a creditable job in sorting out the facts and giving them up to political supervisors. But, what they do with them is what you saw today in this carnival. What never comes out is the policy, Why do these people hate us, And when we have enclaves, such as we have in Baghdad now, an incredible embassy, cost almost $1 billion, you know, it's just a matter of time before some rockets are going to land there. And then who's going to be? Congressman Issa is going to be up in arms saying, why didn't we know about that? And it's he and his colleagues that have deprived the State Department of millions and millions of dollars to defend these things. Not that they're defendable at all. I mean, the reason they hate us is because what we've done in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and now in Syria, and that's not going to stop. But they're going to keep hating us.
Mr. And actually, there was one congressman that really did portray a unique point of view. That is Congressman Dennis Kucinich. And I want to read a part of his testimony today that kind of goes along with what you're saying. He says, you would think that after 10 years in Iraq and 11 years in Afghanistan, the United States would have learned the consequences of interventionism. You would think that after trillions have been wasted on failed attempts at democracy building abroad while our infrastructure crumbles at home, Congress and the administration would re-examine their priorities.
So really right along the lines of what you're saying here is this is not a discussion of not enough security personnel on the ground, not enough money being devoted to it. This is a much larger problem.
It is indeed. Yeah, it's a much larger problem because it's a worldwide problem. And, you know, if we want people not to hate us, then we have to behave in such a way that we don't give them these kinds of grievances to play on. Even Dick Cheney, after he got out of office, slipped and said, among the grievances that the Arabs and Muslims have is our close support for the State of Israel. Can you imagine?
Wow, Dick Cheney said that.
Yeah, he had no speechwriter to check it out. So, you know, that's one of the things. The other thing is our support for people like the Saudi dictatorship and so forth like that, and our history of supporting people like Mubarak and even Gaddafi in his last days. So
again, I think it's a really important point that these are not, this is not the information that's coming out in investigations like the one we saw today, missing probably some of the larger points here. Great point, certainly. Retired CIA officer Raymond McGovern and, of course, RT correspondent Liz Well, who just returned from that hearing on the Hill. Thanks, guys.
thank you, Kristen.